A faint golden light spreads across the endless desert as the sun begins to rise. In the distance, a caravan of camels and horses slowly winds its way along an ancient path, their bells jingling softly in the cool dawn air. This is the Silk Road, a name that evokes images of vast sand dunes, snow-capped mountain passes, and bustling oasis markets. Our story starts in ancient China, over 2,000 years ago. In the 2nd century BCE, during the Han Dynasty, the Chinese Empire was flourishing and seeking new alliances and trade. Emperor Wu of Han had heard whispers of powerful kingdoms far to the west, lands with strong horses, tall and swift, that could aid China against fierce nomadic raiders. In 138 BCE, he sent a young ambassador named Zhang Qian on a daring journey beyond the borders of the empire. With a small band of men, Zhang Qian ventured out from Chang'an, modern Xi'an, the Han capital, heading into the unknown. His mission was to find allies and explore lands past the great deserts and mountains that guarded China, east west. Zhang Qian's travels were arduous and filled with unexpected turns. For years, he trekked across harsh deserts and was even captured by nomadic Xiongnu tribes for a time. Yet his determination never wavered. Eventually, he reached the fertile valleys of Central Asia, encountering peoples like the Yuezhi in what is now Tajikistan. He marveled at strange new fruits, grapes, and pomegranates, and at the sight of the heavenly horses, tall, powerful steeds that the Chinese so greatly coveted. Though he did not secure the military alliance Emperor Wu sought, Zhang Qian returned to China after many years with something just as valuable: knowledge. He brought back rich tales of distant civilizations, bustling cities, and exotic goods available in lands like Fergana, Bactria, and Parthia. The Han court listened with fascination. For the first time, they had a glimpse of a wider world beyond their western mountains, a world filled with potential trading partners. Chinese silk, a precious commodity then unknown to those distant kingdoms, could be exchanged for the horses, jade, and other marvels Zhang Qian described. Spurred by these possibilities, the Han Dynasty began to expand trade westward around 114 BCE. They extended the Great Wall deeper into the western frontier to ensure the protection of caravans from bandits. Small outposts and garrisons were established at oases, ensuring travelers had a safe place to rest and resupply. What started as a trickle of expeditions soon became a steady stream of trade. By the 1st century CE, the trade routes that Zhang Qian pioneered had connected with routes through Central Asia all the way to the Mediterranean. Chinese silk found its way to Persia, and even to the mighty Roman Empire on the far western end of the world. Roman aristocrats in distant Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch draped themselves in delicate silk cloth, enchanted by its texture and sheen. In return, caravans carried westward treasures from the Mediterranean and Middle East, glassware from Rome, fine gold and silver coins, and purebred horses sought by the Chinese. Though neither the Romans nor the Chinese traveled the entire route at first, goods were handed off from one trader to the next like a relay, the connection was made. A transcontinental lifeline of commerce and culture had begun, born from one explorer's journey and an emperor's dream. In these early days, the Silk Road was never a singular east-west highway, but rather a web of paths. Some trails skirted the forbidding Taklamakan Desert, splitting into a northern route and a southern route around its deadly sands. Others wound over high mountain passes where travelers had to brave thin air and icy winds. Few individuals journeyed from Chang'an all the way to Rome. Instead, goods changed hands many times, passing through different kingdoms and peoples. Yet slowly, town by town, oasis by oasis, the ancient world became linked. The Silk Road had been born, and with it, the first glimmers of globalization began to shine. Imagine now the Silk Road at its height, when the routes were at their busiest and most vibrant. This might be during the Tang Dynasty in China, 7th to 9th centuries CE, or under the vast Mongol Empire in the 13th century, times when strong rulers kept the way safe and trade flourished. Caravans by the hundreds traverse the continent, forming long, winding ribbons across deserts and mountains. It is an era of bustling trade, great wealth, and cultural exchange along the Silk Road. Picture one such caravan on the move. Dozens of Bactrian camels plod along, their feet kicking up fine dust. Each camel is laden with treasures, bundles of shimmering silk, sacks of fragrant spices, and crates of delicate porcelain. Walking beside them are merchants from many lands. There are Chinese traders in flowing robes, Persian merchants with embroidered tunics, and perhaps an Arab or Indian merchant who has joined the convoy. Despite their different tongues, they travel together in mutual dependence. The camels sway, and the caravan bells tinkle, creating a gentle music in the dry air. The sun beats down at noon, but the traders press on, dreaming of the riches awaiting them at the next city. By late afternoon, the caravan reaches an oasis town, a welcome green haven after days in the barren landscape. As they approach, they see groves of date palms and hear the distant murmur of a bustling bazaar. Entering the town, the merchants are greeted by a lively scene. Narrow lanes are lined with stalls displaying goods from every corner of the known world. Here, bolts of Chinese silk in every hue are unfurled next to trays of glittering jewels from India. There, the air is sweet with the scent of spices, sharp peppermint, earthy cumin, sweet cinnamon, mingling with the smoky aroma of incense burning at a shrine. Pyramids of nuts and dried fruits from Persian orchards sit alongside stacks of fine ceramics and metalwork. Languages mix in the air as deals are struck. You catch snippets of Chinese and Sogdian, Persian and Arabic, all bargaining animatedly. Gold and silver coins change hands, fabrics are inspected under awnings, and the town's caravanserai prepares for an influx of guests. When evening comes, the travelers lead their animals into the spacious courtyard of the caravanserai, a sturdy inn that will shelter them for the night. The stone walls enclose a world of temporary peace. Inside, lanterns are lit, casting a warm glow on weary faces. The camels are tied and fed, while the merchants gather on carpets around a small fire. A simple but hearty stew bubbles in a pot. Its aroma of lamb, vegetables, and herbs a welcome comfort after the long road. The travelers relax, stretching their sore legs. Some play music. You might hear the soft strumming of a lute or the whisper of a flute under the stars. Others simply recline on cushions, gazing up at the night sky. Overhead, the Milky Way is a ribbon of silver, unmarred by any earthly lights. A familiar splendor to them, yet it still inspires wonder. Within the safe haven of the caravanserai's walls, people from many nations share the camaraderie of the road. A Persian merchant tells a joke that makes a group of Chinese traders chuckle, even if they understand only half the words. The warmth of the moment transcends language. An elderly Buddhist monk traveling to a distant monastery quietly sips tea beside a young Arab trader on his first journey, both enjoying the peaceful night. Here on the Silk Road, they are all travelers together. The oasis beyond may belong to one empire or another, but inside these walls the world is a small community around a fire. This was the golden age of the Silk Road, a time when caravans filled the deserts and mountains, and trade hubs thrived with life. Entire cities prospered on the commerce, and new ideas and art forms flowed along with goods. During the Tang Dynasty, Chinese silk was exchanged for prized Central Asian horses, and fashions and technologies spread in both directions. Later, under the Mongol Empire in the 13th century, nearly the entire route from China to the Mediterranean was united under one rule. This Pax Mongolica, Mongol peace, meant that caravans could travel more safely than ever, protected by the decrees of the great Khans. In those prosperous days, goods and travelers moved freely across Eurasia, and the Silk Road truly became a bridge between East and West, a conduit not only for silks and spices but for languages, inventions, and dreams shared under the same vast sky. Along the Silk Road's path, cities bloomed like jewels in the desert. These trading hubs were vibrant centers where cultures mingled and empires left their mark. Let us stroll through a few of the famous cities at the height of the Silk Road era and glimpse their splendor. At the eastern end stood Chang'an, now called Xi'an, the imperial capital of China during the Han and Tang dynasties. Envision entering Chang'an around the 8th century CE, during the Tang's Golden Age. The city is enormous, home to perhaps 1 million people, making it one of the largest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world. Its streets are laid out in a careful grid, lined with willow trees and elegant tile-roofed houses. 2 huge market districts hum with activity each day. In the Great Western Market, foreign merchants from all along the Silk Road display their wares. You see Sogdian traders from Samarkand and Bukhara, identifiable by their tall caps and richly colored robes, selling exotic perfumes and glasswares. Nearby, an Indian caravan has brought spices and gems, while Arab merchants offer fine woven textiles and incense. Chinese silk dealers and tea sellers bargain with these visitors, using snatches of each other's languages learned through years of trade. The air is filled with music from far-off lands and the mingled aromas of many cuisines: savory Chinese dumplings, spiced Persian kebabs, fragrant Indian curries. Chang'an is a true melting pot of humanity. The city is home to many faiths. You find Buddhist temples and Taoist shrines not far from a Nestorian Christian church or a small mosque built by Persian traders, all coexisting under the Tang emperor's tolerant rule. Protected by a mighty imperial army and a network of watchtowers, Chang'an thrives as a welcoming terminus of the Silk Road. Knowledge and wealth from east and west flow together here, making the city glitter with prosperity and learning behind its formidable walls. Far to the west, across mountains and deserts, lies Samarkand, a storied oasis city in what is now Uzbekistan. For travelers coming in from the barren steppe or the dusty Tarim Basin, Samarkand appears as a lush miracle of civilization. Approaching its gates, you see fertile vineyards and orchards fed by the Zarafshan River, a hint of the abundance within. Inside, Samarkand bustles with activity. Caravans from many directions converge here. You find silks from China, spices from India, ivory from Africa, and furs from the northern steppes all changing hands in the city's thriving markets. In the main square, newly arrived camels kneel as porters unload bales of merchandise amid a babel of languages. The people of Samarkand are as diverse as the goods. Persians, Turks, Indians, Chinese, and others walk its streets, their varied clothing and features showing the blend of cultures. The city itself is a center of craftsmanship, famous for its papermaking, silk weaving, and metalworking, arts enriched by techniques from distant lands. By night, Samarkand's skyline of blue-tiled mosques and madrasas, built in later centuries by the conqueror Timur and his descendants, glows under the moonlight, giving the city an almost enchanted aura. Many a traveler fell in love with Samarkand. The Moroccan explorer Ibn Battuta, visiting in the 1330s, described it as one of the greatest and finest of cities. Even after Mongol invasions ravaged Central Asia, Samarkand rose from the ashes, regaining its place as a glittering jewel of the Silk Road. Further west along the route lies Kashgar, an isolated oasis at the foot of the Pamir Mountains in Xinjiang, western China. For over 2,000 years, caravans converged here, coming from China, Central Asia, India, and Persia. Kashgar's bazaar was famed for its bustling market and the vibrant mix of peoples trading. This city, at the crossroads of the northern and southern Silk Roads, was a vital resupply point and marketplace before travelers ventured onward into the high mountains or arid plains. One cannot forget Baghdad, the great capital of the Abbasid Caliphate in the Middle East. Though somewhat off the direct overland route, Baghdad in the 9th century was the thriving heart of an Islamic golden age and a key link in Silk Road networks. Picture Baghdad at dusk, the Tigris River reflecting the orange glow of sunset, and the city's silhouette bristling with palm trees, minarets, and palace domes. Its bazaars are legendary, filled with merchants from Persia, Central Asia, India, and beyond. One medieval geographer wrote that Baghdad was the place Gigyu where all the world's wealth was gathered. Here, Chinese silk and paper, carried over mountains and across Persian lands, could be found alongside Arabian perfumes, African gold, and European linen. Baghdad's own artisans produced fine glassware, lustrous ceramics, and ornate textiles woven with gold threads, goods that would, in turn, travel eastward. The city's streets rang with the sounds of many languages, and its libraries and academies were filled with scholars from many backgrounds. Under the enlightened protection of the Abbasid caliphs, Baghdad welcomed traders and intellectuals alike. It became a cosmopolitan center where ideas as much as goods were exchanged. Greek philosophy translated into Arabic, Indian mathematics shared with Persian astronomers, and medicinal knowledge from Egypt finding its way to Chinese doctors. In its heyday, Baghdad was truly a crossroads of the Silk Road world, a glittering city of peace and prosperity connecting east and west. Many other cities flourished along the Silk Road: Bukhara and Merv in Central Asia, Khotan on the rim of the Taklamakan Khan, Herat and Balkh farther west, Damascus and Aleppo at the door to the Mediterranean, to name only a few. Each city was a vital bead on the necklace of the Silk Road. Of course, these cities often rose and fell with the fortunes of the empires that ruled them. When strong kingdoms and khanats kept the peace, trade bloomed and towns prospered. When wars flared or bandits prowled, those same cities could wither as trade moved elsewhere. Yet overall, for long stretches of history, the Silk Road cities thrived, protected and nourished by the great empires. The Chinese, Persian, and Arab rulers, among others, all recognized the value of this commerce and took measures to foster it. They built caravanserais and fortified walls, provided escorts for caravans or at least patrolled the main routes, and levied taxes and tolls that also served as guarantees of safe passage. In short, when empires ensured safety, the Silk Road's cities prospered, serving as vibrant marketplaces where goods and ideas changed hands, inspiring all who passed through. Among the many who traveled the Silk Road, a few legendary figures stand out. Their courageous journeys, preserved in writings and tales, help us imagine the experiences of those long-ago days. First, picture Marco Polo, perhaps the most famous Silk Road traveler of all. In 1271, this young man from Venice set out with his father and uncle, heading east along the trade routes. Marco Polo's journey took him across the Middle East and Central Asia, all the way to the court of the great Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan in China. He spent about 17 years in Kublai's service, exploring the vast empire. Marco marveled at sights that seemed fantastical to medieval Europeans: cities of staggering size and wealth, an emperor's palace lit by thousands of lanterns, paper money used in markets, and even black stones, coal, that burned to provide heat. When he finally returned home, Marco Polo dictated the story of his travels while imprisoned during a local war. His account, The Travels of Marco Polo, opened European eyes to the wonders of Asia. He described fertile farmlands in Persia, the busy ports of India, the majestic grandeur of the Khan's capital, and the immense riches of Cathay, China. Though some listeners found his tales hard to believe, his book ignited the imagination of merchants and explorers for generations. Marco Polo's name became synonymous with the spirit of adventure that the Silk Road embodied. Next, consider Ibn Battuta, a scholar from Morocco in the 14th century. Ibn Battuta set out at age 21 in 1325 to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, but his journey did not end there. Travel along the Silk Road was not all riches and glory. It was also rife with dangers, balanced by countless wonders. The journey tested every traveler's courage and endurance. Let us consider some of the perils these ancient traders faced and the rewards that awaited them beyond those hazards. One constant threat was banditry. Long stretches of the route passed through lawless wilderness where robbers lurked. A small, poorly guarded caravan could be ambushed in a narrow mountain gorge or attacked amid lonely dunes. To protect themselves, merchants often banded together in large caravans and hired armed escorts. One can imagine the tense nights when guards stood watch on the dunes, hands on their swords, peering into darkness for any sign of raiders. Many tales speak of bandits on horseback swooping down, intent on stealing precious cargo. The fear of such attacks was a constant companion on the road, making the moments of safety within a walled town or caravanserai feel especially sweet. Nature itself posed huge challenges. The Silk Road traversed some of the harshest environments on Earth. The Taklamakan Desert in western China was one of the most feared sections. Its name is said to mean, "Go in and you want to come out," a grim warning. In summer, the heat was blistering. In winter, biting winds howled over the dunes. Travelers stuck to the edges of this desert, moving from oasis to oasis. But even then, sudden sandstorms could erase the trail and leave a caravan groping blindly under a choking sky. Then there were the towering Pamir and Karakoram mountains. Trails there zigzagged up steep, treacherous slopes where travelers and pack animals alike gasped for oxygen in the thin, high-altitude air. In these heights, a misstep could send one tumbling down a ravine. Blizzards could strike without warning. Some travelers wrote of crossing passes littered with bleached bones, grim evidence of those who had perished from falls or exposure. Only the hardiest and best prepared survived these portions, and yet, on a clear morning atop a high pass, gazing at the panorama of snow-capped peaks glowing pink in the dawn, many must have felt that the wonders outweighed the hardship. Another invisible danger traveled with the caravans: disease. With people and goods constantly moving between regions, illnesses spread along the Silk Road corridors. The most infamous was the plague. In the mid-14th century, the bubonic plague, the Black Death, is believed to have journeyed with traders from Central Asia to the Middle East and eventually to Europe. It caused devastation on a scale the world had never seen. Tens of millions perished. Imagine the fear and confusion as this terrible sickness followed the familiar trade routes. Markets fell silent, and caravanserais barred their gates to outsiders, but to little avail. The plague's spread underscored that the Silk Road carried not only fortune, but risk. The network that linked civilizations could also transmit their afflictions. And yet, despite all these perils, those who braved the Silk Road also encountered wonders that made the risks worthwhile. The cultural exchange fostered by these routes was perhaps the Silk Road's greatest treasure. In caravanserais and marketplaces, people of vastly different backgrounds met and learned from one another. They exchanged languages, art styles, musical tunes, recipes, and beliefs along with trade goods. A Persian merchant might learn new herbal remedies from an Indian healer. A Chinese monk might converse about philosophy with a Greek from far-off Antioch. Artistic influences intermingled. In Central Asia, the realistic styles of Hellenistic Greek art merged with Buddhist themes to create beautiful Greco-Buddhist art visible in the earliest human depictions of the Buddha, carved in places like Gandhara. Silk Road paintings found in desert caves show motifs of winged angels and grapevines, designs clearly borrowed from the Mediterranean West, beside depictions of Indian lotus flowers and Chinese cloud patterns. In music, foreign lutes and flutes found their way into Chinese courts, and Central Asian rhythms influenced tunes as far west as the Levant. Religion was among the most precious cargo carried on the Silk Road, albeit invisible and weightless. Buddhism, born in India, traveled with monks and traders across Central Asia into China, Korea, and Japan. Many merchants were devout Buddhists, and they often stopped at monasteries along the way. These monasteries, in addition to providing spiritual services, offered free rest and refuge for traveling caravans. In turn, grateful merchants donated money or supplies to the monks. Thus, Buddhist monastic communities thrived on the Silk Road, and Buddhism itself spread peacefully, town by town, toward the Far East. Later, Islam spread in similar fashion. After the rise of the Arab caliphates in the 7th century, Muslim traders and Sufi mystics journeyed eastward. By the 8th and 9th centuries, mosques appeared in Silk Road oasis towns, and a Muslim quarter existed even in Chang'an. Christianity, too, left its mark. Nestorian Christian missionaries reached China by 635 CE, establishing a church in Chang, and leaving behind the famous Shi, an stele that documents early Christian communities in the Tang dynasty. In effect, the Silk Road was a highway of faith, a route by which ideas of compassion, salvation, and morality spread into new lands. This religious exchange permanently altered the spiritual landscape of Asia and Europe. Perhaps the most heartwarming wonder of the Silk Road was the simple camaraderie it nurtured among ordinary people. Imagine a desert caravanserai, where a Greek merchant, a Persian scholar, an Indian sage, and a Chinese monk all shared dried dates and almonds under the same lantern light, exchanging stories and ideas despite their different tongues. Such scenes were real. In the close quarters of caravan life, people formed unlikely friendships. They learned bits of each other's languages, tasted each other's foods, celebrated festivals together when timing coincided. Over months of travel, a kind of caravan family might form, one that cared for each member through sandstorms and illnesses and long cold nights on the steppe. Through these intimate interactions, prejudices could soften and horizons broaden. A traveler who completed the Silk Road journey likely returned home forever changed, with new ideas, flavors, and friendships enriching his life. The Silk Road, in truth, was not a one-way route from point A to point B. It was a two-way street, indeed a multi-way network, that wove a tapestry of human connection. Every danger it posed was counterbalanced by the profound reward of discovery. Every risk taken by a caravan brought not only material profit, but often a gain in knowledge or empathy. The legacy of these exchanges can still be felt today in the blended cultures and shared innovations that descended from them. In the goods and ideas it passed along, the Silk Road truly left a wealth beyond price. All journeys must end, and so it was with the Silk Road. After flourishing for over a millennium, the overland trade routes gradually fell into decline in the late Middle Ages. By the 15th century, the world was changing in ways that the old camel caravans could not withstand. Several forces brought about the Silk Road's end. One was the fragmentation of the great empires that had once protected it. The mighty Mongol Empire, which in the 13th century provided safe passage across Eurasia, the Pax Mongolica, eventually broke into smaller khanates that fought among themselves. Without a single authority guaranteeing security, parts of the route became vulnerable to renewed banditry and political barriers. Meanwhile, in the West, the growing Ottoman Empire in the 15th century came to dominate the Middle East. In 1453, the Ottomans captured Constantinople, Byzantium's capital, and their control over the overland routes of Western Asia made it more difficult and costly for European merchants to import Asian goods. The Ottoman rulers at times imposed high tolls or outright bans on trade with certain European states. Facing these obstacles, the European kingdoms, hungry for the spices, silks, and porcelains of the East, began to seek out new paths to reach Asia that would bypass the old overland routes. This quest led to the Age of Discovery. Bold navigators turned to the seas. In 1498, the Portuguese captain Vasco da Gama succeeded in sailing from Europe around Africa, as Cape of Good Hope, to reach India. This was a monumental achievement. It opened a maritime route to South Asia and beyond, allowing goods to be transported by ship in large quantities directly from Asia to Europe. Over the next century, the Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, and other European powers established regular sea trade with India, the Spice Islands, China, and Japan. Compared to the arduous land journey of a year or more from Beijing to Venice, a sailing ship, though facing its own perils at sea, could carry far more cargo and often do so faster. As maritime trade grew, the old caravan roads saw ever fewer travelers. The Silk Road, once the busy highway of the world's commerce, slowly fell quiet. By around 1500, the Silk Road was largely dormant. The devastation of the Black Death a century earlier, which had itself traveled along the trade routes, and the loss of Mongol unity had already weakened it. Now the booming sea routes completed its obsolescence. The economic focus of long-distance trade shifted to the coasts, to great port cities and oceanic voyages. Section by section, the ancient road was abandoned. Caravanserais in Central Asian deserts fell into disuse, their courtyards that once echoed with merchants' voices filled with sand and weeds. Many of the Silk Road AS cities either faded in importance or reinvented themselves as regional centers relatively isolated from global trade. The network of exchange that had once connected East and West was effectively broken. It is poignant to imagine the last days of the Silk Road. Perhaps we picture a lone caravan trekking through a silent desert where once many had passed. The camel drivers follow faint wheel ruts that grow fainter each season. They pass a crumbling caravanserai, its walls slowly being reclaimed by the dunes. Inside that ruin, an old well still offers brackish water. The travelers water their animals in the shadows of broken arches, aware that these may be the footprints of the past they are treading. Around the campfire at night, the merchants reminisce about how their fathers or grandfathers spoke of busier days, when this route brimmed with life, when dozens of caravans might be spotted in a week and silks and gems were exchanged in bustling bazaars. Now they carry mostly humble wares, local textiles, salt or dried fruit, destined for the next town rather than far-off emperors. At journey's end, these caravanners unload their meager goods in a town that once thrived on Silk Road riches but has since become a sleepy provincial outpost. The bazaar is quiet. The grand caravanserai in the center of town is now used as a storage barn, or not at all. Perhaps a dusty strand of silk is still for sale in a corner shop, but it's likely been brought by sea to a Persian Gulf port and then inland. The age of transcontinental camel caravans is nearly over. The merchants pack up what little they earned and prepare for the long return journey, resigned that each year there is less and less reason to ply these fading routes. So, the Silk Road did not end with an abrupt closure, but rather with a gradual fading away. By the time Christopher Columbus set sail across the Atlantic in 1492, the Silk Road's glory days were already a distant memory. What remained were the stories and legacies. Yet the idea of the Silk Road never truly died. It lived on in legend and nostalgia. For centuries to come, people would speak of those old routes with a sense of wonder. And in our modern era, as we shall see, there have been conscious efforts to revive and commemorate that ancient bond between East and West. Though the camel caravans have long since disappeared, the legacy of the Silk Road lives on all around us. The Silk Road was not just a network of trade routes. It was a conduit of culture that forever changed the societies it touched. Its echoes can be heard in our languages, our foods, our arts, and even in modern projects and ambitions. Consider everyday words and products. The very term silk in English harkens back to this ancient trade, derived from the name the Greeks gave for Chinese silk. Many common items trace their origins to Silk Road exchanges. The peach, for example, originally domesticated in China, traveled west and became a fixture in Mediterranean orchards. Conversely, the grape and alfalfa, lucerne, were carried eastward into China from Central Asia, changing agricultural diets there. Techniques of paper-making, which the Chinese perfected in the 2nd century CE, spread to the Middle East by the 8th century. After a famous battle where the Arabs captured Chinese papermakers and eventually into Europe, a transfer of technology that revolutionized communication worldwide. Gunpowder and the magnetic compass, both Chinese innovations, also found their way to the West via the Silk Road and later maritime routes, dramatically affecting warfare and navigation in Europe. From the West, glass-blowing techniques and certain astronomical instruments made their way east and influenced crafts in Persia, India, and China. Even our languages carry evidence of Silk Road links. For instance, the word for tea reveals the route by which it arrived. In Central Asia, Persia, Russia, and many parts of the Middle East, tea is called chai, derived from the northern Chinese word cha, because those regions first learned of tea through overland caravans. In contrast, in Western Europe the word is tea, or te, etc., from the coastal Fujian Chinese tieng, because Europeans acquired tea via sea trade. Such linguistic quirks are tiny fossils of the Silk Road's paths. Our cuisine today would be far less rich if not for the Silk Road. It's a romantic legend that Marco Polo brought pasta from China to Italy. Likely untrue, as Italians had pasta independently. But there were countless genuine culinary exchanges. The spices that define many world cuisines, cinnamon, nutmeg, pepper, saffron, were all spread in part through Silk Road trade, often in combination with sea trade. The chilies that spice up Western Chinese and Central Asian food came originally from the Americas but traveled back along post-Silk Road trade routes, transforming Sichuan and Uyghur dishes. The Silk Road introduced new fruits and vegetables across continents. The carrot, originally purple in Central Asia, reached China and also Europe, evolving into the orange carrot we know. Spinach from Persia made its way to China, where it's still called Persian vegetable. Grapes and wine culture moved east, while tea moved west. Even something as simple as the habit of eating stuffed dumplings has a Silk Road pedigree, from the Chinese mantu or bao to the Turkic manti to Italian ravioli. One can trace a lineage of delicious dough-wrapped treats shared and adapted by many cultures through trade and migration. In the realm of art and design, the Silk Road created cross-cultural blends that endure in aesthetic traditions. Chinese porcelain glazes achieved their famous cobalt blue hue thanks to cobalt ore imported from Persia. Conversely, Chinese motifs like the phoenix or the peony flower found their way onto Persian tiles and Ottoman textiles, the iconic paisley design of Persia. Also called bote, is thought by some scholars to have been inspired by a mixture of Chinese yin-yang symbols and Indian floral patterns, a true Silk Road hybrid. Greco-Buddhist art, which we discussed earlier, left a lasting impact on Buddhist imagery across Asia. We see traces of classical Greek drapery styles in the flowing robes of Buddha statues in China and Japan. Medieval European art and literature were enriched by Silk Road influences too. The arrival of silk fabric changed fashion and textile arts in Europe for centuries, and encounters with Mongol and Chinese art broadened European perspectives during the Renaissance. Beyond tangible goods, the Silk Road's greatest legacy may be the lesson of connection it offers. It showed that distant cultures could learn from one another and find common ground. In an era often imagined to be isolated and provincial, the Silk Road was a powerful proof of global interconnectedness. This legacy has not been forgotten. In modern times, scholars and nations celebrate the Silk Road as a symbol of peaceful exchange. UNESCO, for instance, launched a Silk Road program to promote research and cultural heritage along the ancient routes. In 2014, UNESCO designated portions of the Silk Road, such as the routes and oasis cities spanning from Chiang-de-An in China to the Tian Shan Mountains in Central Asia, as a World Heritage Site. This international recognition highlights the Silk Road's importance in shaping human history. Moreover, the idea of the Silk Road has inspired new initiatives. Notably, China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, in the 21st century explicitly evokes the Silk Road's legacy. This massive project aims to build modern infrastructure and trade networks across Eurasia and beyond, investing in highways, railroads, and ports to better connect China with Europe, Africa, and Southeast Asia. It's often called the New Silk Road, a testament to how evocative those ancient routes remain. Whether one views the BRI in a positive or critical light, it undeniably draws on the memory of the Silk Road, underlining how powerful that historical concept still is in the modern imagination. Today, one can still feel echoes of the Silk Road by traveling its remnants. A tourist can stand before the medieval walls of Khiva in Uzbekistan, or walk through the ornate Registan Square of Samarkand and sense the cosmopolitan aura that once permeated those places. In Xi'an, one can visit the Muslim quarter and eat spiced lamb skewers and flatbread, foods brought by Persian traders 1,000 years ago and now as local as noodles and dumplings. Across Central Asia, people still recount folk tales of wise merchants and pious monks who traversed the Great Road. Festivals in cities like Kashgar and Bukhara celebrate their Silk Road heritage with music and dance that blend Turkic, Persian, Chinese, and Russian elements, a living legacy of cultural fusion. Even in the West, the Silk Road ES romance endures. It ES in the names of restaurants and music ensembles, in the fascination with figures like Marco Polo, and in a general awareness that long before airplanes and the Internet, our world was linked by caravans winding through the deserts. As we reflect on the Silk Road's legacy, we realize that it never truly vanished. It survives in every instance of cultural blending, in embroidered textiles where motifs from different lands intertwine, in musical instruments that migrated and evolved, and in the shared legends and fairy tales that exist with variations in dozens of languages. The Silk Road is a reminder that isolation is the exception in history, not the norm. For over a millennium, it was a thriving proof that people have always reached out to connect, trade, teach, and learn from each other. In our era of globalization, the Silk Road's story feels especially relevant. It tells us that engaging with those different from ourselves is not a modern phenomenon, but an ancient and enriching human tradition. Now our long journey comes to an end. Let us pause and drift into a quiet scene. A peaceful night in the desert along what was once the Silk Road. The air is cool and still. Above, countless stars form a luminous ribbon across the sky, the same Milky Way that ancient travelers watched as they camped after a long day's trek. Imagine standing amid the gentle dunes where centuries ago a caravan might have halted. In the distance, the dark outline of a ruined caravanserai is barely visible, its walls worn down by time. You close your eyes and listen. At first, there is only silence. But as your mind wanders, you begin to hear faint echoes from the past. The soft jingle of camel bells, the murmured prayers of travelers thanking the stars for safe passage, perhaps even a distant strain of a flute carrying a nostalgic tune. These sounds linger at the edge of hearing, like a half-remembered melody. You walk slowly toward the old caravanserai. In your imagination, its courtyard is restored. A warm, golden lantern light flickers from a doorway, and you see shadowy figures, merchants of old, tending to their camels and laying out bedding mats. A fire crackles gently in the center of the yard. Though you know they are only ghosts of history, you feel no fear, only a comforting sense of kinship with those who came before. Here you are, a traveler of the present, reaching out across time to travelers of the past. You find a smooth stone and sit quietly on the sand, wrapping your cloak tighter as a night breeze, dry and cool, brushes by. Overhead, the stars seem to shine with an extra brilliance, as if to illuminate these memories. In this moment, you feel the profound stillness of the desert night. The bustle and clamor of day are gone. Even the memories of caravans grow silent. There's a deep peace. The sky's dome makes you feel both small and connected to something vast. Breathing slowly, you take in the same night air that once filled the lungs of a trader from Damascus, a monk from Dunhuang, a nomad from the steppe. Under these stars, all differences of culture and time fall away. It is easy to imagine that the souls of those travelers are gathered here with you in spirit, united by the eternal road of human experience. As your eyes grow heavy, you let these impressions wash over you. The desert sand still holds a trace of the day's warmth beneath you, soothing and grounding. You might even imagine the faint echo of laughter around a long-quenched fire, or see a wavering lantern light bobbing over a distant dune, the spectral silhouette of a bygone caravan finding its way under the moon. All journeys end, but each ending is followed by rest and reflection. In our imagination, we have followed the Silk Road from dawn to dusk, through bustling cities and lonely plains. Now, night has fallen, inviting us to rest and carry these stories into our dreams. The ancient Silk Road lies in quiet ruins beneath the moonlight, yet its spirit remains alive in every exchange of kindness, every curiosity about a far-off land, every thread that connects people across distances. When you finally drift into sleep, allow the images of the Silk Road to gently accompany you. Perhaps you find yourself riding a camel under the stars, or walking through a torchlit caravanserai gate. Perhaps you are simply gazing at the constellations that guided so many before you. Feel the calm and wonder that this journey has evoked. In this relaxed state, know that in a way we are all travelers on our own life's road, and that somewhere out there, across mountains or oceans, others gaze at the same stars and feel the same hopes. The night on the old Silk Road is soft and silent now. The caravans have passed, but their memory is a gentle lullaby carried on the desert breeze. Let that lullaby carry you into a deep and pleasant sleep. Tomorrow, and every tomorrow, new journeys await. But for now, you rest under the same sky that watched over the Silk Road, safe and serene, with dreams of golden sands, distant bells, and the comforting knowledge that the world is linked by invisible threads of friendship, threads that, like the Silk Road, endure through the ages. Good night.